Right, where do I start? I want to talk a little bit about the background of myself first, and then why I came up with the invention that I have, Ewgeco, which I have sitting over here, and then a little about where it is today, and also where I think the market is going to go for live displays as well. The background to myself is I didn't find out till I was 19 I was dyslexic. I knew at school that I was quite bright, but I wasn't able to achieve what the teachers expected of me. And I found myself always being asked to go into remedial classes and you know, classes where I felt a wee bit strange in, but was asked to go there because I wasn't able to achieve what the mainstream school could. And when I was 19, I heard of the dyslexia and started to look into it and got some tests and found out I actually had severe dyslexia with a reading age of 9. But I always was good at my maths, so I knew that I wasn't really stupid. It didn't inspire me to do anything at all. I just decided to go very much into manual work and just to go out there and use my hands and just, you know, just do jobs. So I worked in a nightclub, I was a dental nurse, worked in shops, just lots of just different things, gardening, everything you could think of. And then and really enjoyed my life, I may add. My sports were my life. I water skied and snow skied and thoroughly enjoyed it. Used to be able to afford it by finding sponsorships. So I was quite clever and things like that. So I suppose I was showing a bit of entrepreneurship at that stage. And then unfortunately in my early 30s I was on holiday in Portugal. I was golfing and I was bitten by a tick. A cattle tick, and in Scotland you get it as well of deer ticks, and I contracted this most dreadful illness called Lyme disease, and I don't know if any of you have come across it before. It's a debilitating neurological disorder. It's also an autoimmune disease, so it can mutate into lots of other illnesses as well. So I found myself in a wheelchair, found myself in and out of hospital continuously, and I had palsy down my left side. I lost most of my memory, although a lot of it has come back, but not all of it. And I also found it very difficult to speak. My speech was very, very slurred for a long time. And I literally, when I look back at it, I just slept for 2 years. That's all I can really remember. I just slept. And very slowly, over 7 years, I went through rehab, and I was able to walk again, talk again, get some of my memory back. But what I couldn't do was do my sports anymore because I wasn't well enough, and I had this brain that I had to start doing something with. So I went to my local college, which is now university, the University of Highlands and Islands, and I started doing courses on all sorts of things: genealogy, calligraphy, healthy eating, Tai Chi, you know, you name it, anything just to keep me going. And it did sort of keep me through this time. And then I was very lucky to meet my husband and get married. And we had this new house, and I decided that we wanted a family, and because of my illness I had to go through IVF. So I was at home going through IVF, and every single day I used to give myself a challenge just to keep me going. Most of the time, I must admit, I didn't leave the house, and a lot of the time I didn't even get dressed. And it was in the February of 2006, March 2006, and I received this absolutely shocking gas bill. It was nearly £500. Now luckily I could afford to pay it, but I was just so annoyed at myself for letting it get that high. And my husband's leaving the house that morning, and he said, "Tanya, what are you going to do today?" And I just told him this bill saying, "I'm going to sort it out." And I've no idea where that statement has actually have taken me over these years. So the first thing I did was I went outside and started to engage with my meters. And I don't know if any of you have. I always used to read my meters, but I never actually studied them. They're rubbish. They tell you absolutely nothing. And I got really annoyed at that. And I wanted to know if I turned my radiators down from 3 to 2.5, because I had high ceilings and low ceilings, our thermostat didn't work. So I just had to regulate each of my radiators. What difference did it actually make? I was already wearing thermal underwear, so I had done what I thought I could do. And it couldn't tell me anything at all. So I just got a computer in the January, and I was just learning to work Google because I was so behind in things because I hadn't worked for nearly a decade. And I literally typed in live energy monitor because that's what I wanted. I wanted to see my energy live. Nothing, absolutely nothing. And I sort of cleverly started to work out how you search America and how you search other countries, and I literally could find nothing from anywhere at all. But what I did find coming up a lot was smart meters. So I had to look into smart meters. I thought, well, I'll get a smart meter then, it's smart. And actually, a smart meter is a meter, so it's still outside, it's still inaccessible, you can't reach it. And all it does is give you a digital display. It does text your energy company to tell you what you're doing all the time, but it doesn't tell you. You have to then wait on your energy company coming back to you. So it didn't solve my problem. If I turn my radiators down, what difference did it make? And I thought, well, you know, this is wrongly named, a smart meter. So I started sitting at the table and telling my husband all about this that night, and started sketching away what I thought a live energy monitor should look like. Now, my husband's an estimator for flooring companies, so he has graph paper on the table all the time. And he drew the last one, and that was his G-Shock watch that he was wearing. Can you see the wee dials? So there was no real rhyme or reason. We just started sketching. You know, they're pretty rubbish, but you have to start somewhere. And I thought, right, I've got to do something here. So I remember something my grandfather said when I was about 9 or 10. He said, get yourself a patent, Tanya, and it'll look after you for the rest of your life. He never told me to invent anything. I quite like that. And he obviously didn't think I was bright enough. So I looked on the patent website to see if I could find anything there. And at the time, it was actually quite rubbish. And I've actually been to the head office and to tell them this, and they have changed it since then. But what I did find when I went on their website was a link to ICAS. I don't know if any of you come across them, the Innovating Counselling Advisory Service for Scotland. And basically, they put some reality on things. They'll tell you if it's a chocolate teapot or not, and if it's worth doing anything with. So I phoned the guy up. I noticed they had a link for somebody in Tayside and Fife. I stay in Perth. So I phoned him up and went along. Now, bearing in mind, I hadn't worked for 7, 8 years. I was possibly pregnant at the time. I didn't wear a suit or anything. I went along with those crappy sketches. And he took me seriously. I gave him a pitch on the environment and where I think it was going to go. And then I told him about my idea. And he said to me, it's a bit obvious, Tanya. And I says, well, I know, but I can't find anything. And he says, okay, well, I've got a budget. That's what we do. I'll go and research and I'll get back to you. So he came back in less than a week and said, need to meet up. And it was at that point that I actually found out that I was pregnant with twins as well. And he said, girl, you're onto something. And I was like, really? He says, but you're going to have to move quick. And I'm like, all right, okay. So the first thing he did was take me along to EDTC, and it was just a morning meeting, and I found myself in the room until nearly 4:45 at night with these experts. And they all turned around and said, my idea was actually possible. We could, using existing meters, make them smart and display live energy, as you see here right now. And I came away so elated that actually there's something in this. But deep down I'm thinking, I'm pregnant, what am I going to do? I haven't worked for years, how's this going to fare up? So EDTC started taking me to some different organisations to get some advice. And one of the ones they took me to was Shore Design, which is a design agency. And I met who is now my co-founder, Ken McCorkindale. I quite laugh, I was telling him I was going to show you all this tonight. He now is completely grey and going bald. That's what 5 years, 6 years of working with me does to you. He started to sketch out what he thought Ewgeco should look like. It didn't have a name at that time. And these are just some of his first sketches, but he very early on said to me, kids don't understand that that's more than that, but kids don't always understand that's more than that. So we're trying to put some intuitiveness into what we're actually trying to create. We're thinking of the end users and how we're putting this together. There was himself, and there was various amounts of people that I met over that period of time, and I really got a good feeling for what I needed to do, and I was getting really hyper about everything. And then unfortunately one Sunday, after my husband had been out most of the night, I miscarried at home, and he was being sick, so I had to drive myself to hospital. And when he eventually came to the hospital with my sister-in-law, they said that I'd lost my twins and I would have to go to Ninewells because they were worried about me. So I went through to Ninewells and I waited 4 hours, and in the end they gave me a scan and found that I had one baby left, and he was perfectly fine. But they said, you're going to have to stay in hospital, a good 6, at least a week, 10 days, and rest, and you're really going to have to look after yourself. So guess what I did? I wrote my business plan, because I had 6 whole days of complete peace and quiet in the hospital. And when I came out, I announced to my husband that I wanted him to sell the flat that he had before we met, so that it could pay for me to start the company. And on the way back in the car, I'm telling him all these things, and I ended up being in the car phoning all the companies that I had started to work with, telling them I'm still alive and I'm going to be doing this, and I've written my business plan. And he came outside with a cup of tea for me, because I wasn't even in the house, I was still phoning everybody. So I was very lucky that he didn't turn around and sort of divorce me or walk away from me at all. So it was then that I had to start really putting things together. And from then, Ken joined the company part-time with the money that I was able to put into myself. and raised some money. He didn't become a co-founder at that stage. He just came in and started helping me put this all together. We got our prototypes together. We tried to look at all the market and work out where to go. I'm not going to talk about the whole process because it was very long and it was 2 years of a sort of very painful exercise. But if we jump on ahead now, Ewgeco, 6 years on, has raised 3.2 million to get to where it is right now. We've got our first generation product being sold into homes and businesses. And for the homes, 12 out of the top 16 house builders are specifying Ewgeco literally on spec all the time now. So the volumes are quite considerable. So our turnover is going through the roof at the moment, and it's great to see. And I often drive past whole streets with my family and think every one of those houses has a Ewgeco in it. Napier did a study for us about 3 years ago now, and they worked out an average saving for someone with Ewgeco, and this was social housing, was 27%. So the vision that I had that Ken was able to put into reality through this product here was to give you the live energy in an intuitive and easy way so you understand it. And every household within that study also said that they lived better quality of life within their home as well. They cut down on the things that were high energy using, like their washing machine. They saw for themselves a load was like 47 pence, but if they turned it to 30 degrees, it was like 35 pence. So they went, right, we're going to start doing this. But things like a radio on in the background was pennies a year, so they kept these things on. So really good feedback. It really has been groundbreaking. We were the first in the world to do what we're doing. We're the first display to display both electricity, water, gas and microgeneration in the world using existing meters. So at this point there's no need for smart meters. We can do it with existing infrastructure. For the business market, we're literally into lots of businesses throughout the UK. Vodafone, Costa Coffee, to name a couple. Haven Caravan Parks and Butlins, they've got Ewgecos in them now as well. Oops. Scottish Government, they've had a very successful pilot now, rolling them out in many of their buildings. We've got SME customers, and we've also got very large customers, and we've got things like facility management companies who are helping us distribute and install these as well. This is an up and coming market, and it is more challenging for us. We're really finding we're having to push and commercialise it. So if I speed forward as to where we are in the market now, I started lobbying the government and speaking very publicly and going on television and radio all about smart metering and why it just really didn't fit. And on 9th of December 2009, I'm very honoured to say that the government actually listened and mandated what's called in-home displays. So all smart meters in the UK that will be installed from 2014 will have to have a live display come with it. So I felt like I've left an impact or a mark now in the fact that smart meters in many countries in the world have been launched and rolled out without any display whatsoever, but the British government have realised that it is required. So I'm very honoured, but they fell short of mandating it for businesses, so there is no actual driver just now. So because of that, there is a flurry of activity within the live display market, and we're finding now we have a lot more competition, but there's a very big market out there as well, so we're not actually too worried. Because we've been in it now for 6 years, we feel that we're fairly up to speed with what we need to do in order. So we started creating our second generation product earlier this year, and we're calling it Neck Things, and it's been launched in the summer of next year, and it's quite exciting. I find it quite hard work because we're selling into 2 markets and we're developing a third product, so my brain does ache at night when I go to my bed, but it's very exciting. So I think for me, if somebody asks me where do I think things are going to go, well, basically I feel in the next decade every building, whether it's a home or a commercial building, will have a live display or live displays situated everywhere. And I don't mean a dashboard and reception for the people walking in, I'm meaning the users of the building right next to where you're actually working, so you can see live what's going on. So many of our customers, because they can see it and see their actions immediately, like why do we have 2 screens right now when we really only need 1? If you put this turned off, you would see how much you would save. I know it's a tiny thing, but all these things add up. And that's really where I think things are going to go, and I truly believe that's the way. Energy is going to be such a precious resource in the future that we're all going to have to be able to control it, and the way to control it is to see it live.